بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. درس قرآن بعلامة غلام أحمد Parwez. Chapter 38, Surah Al-Baqarah 2, verses 177 to 179. Beloved brothers, today is the 23rd of March, 1969, and the lesson begins with verse 177 of Surah Al-Baqarah 2:177. The matter of halal and haram is found in all religions with some differences. In the previous verses, details regarding halal and haram were presented. These matters exist in all religions of the world. The details may differ, but the concept of halal and haram, these kinds of particulars, are present in every religion. From this it becomes clear that these are shared values found both in religion, madhab, and in deen. It is true that deen also contains particulars, but as soon as these particulars and branches are mentioned, the Quran immediately clarifies the difference between madhab and deen, the divine system.
A fundamental difference between religion and deen in terms of practical results. In madhab, these details and rituals become ends in themselves. The ceremonies and outward forms, which are meant to serve a principle, are treated as the ultimate purpose. But in deen, they are only means to achieve a great objective. If that objective is not present, if these practices are not serving as a means to attain it, then one must pause and reflect. Perhaps something is wrong. What we are doing may be happening mechanically without producing results. It is like gathering dry wood in the cold, sitting around it to warm ourselves, but the cold does not lessen, the heat does not reach us. The problem is not the wood itself. The problem is that there is no matchstick, no inner spark, so the wood does not burn. The wood is not the end in itself, it is only a means to obtain warmth. Madhab merely sets up the dry wood and says, sit around it, your cold will go away. People sit, but the cold does not go away. Then it says, keep sitting. If it does not go away here, it will go away in the hereafter, after death. Deen, however, demands, if the cold is not lessening, then something is wrong. Think, where is the mistake? Its standard is the result. Its test is pragmatic. It demonstrates, it produces outcomes. The result itself becomes proof of the truth of its claim. This is deen. Beloved brothers, as soon as the Quran mentioned those particulars and details which are common across religions, such as the matters of halal and haram, it immediately presented a great verse that distinguishes deen from madhab, religion. As I often say, madhab stands at a certain stage, but deen challenges madhab. The Quran declares, لَيْسَ الْبِرَّ أَن تُوَلُّوا وُجُوهَكُمْ قِبَلَ الْمَشْرِقِ وَالْمَغْرِبِ. Righteousness is not that you turn your faces toward the east or the west. Do not think that this alone is virtue. Do not imagine that turning your face toward the east or the west is the path to expansion and salvation. See how great a challenge this is. It almost appears as if an atheist is speaking, saying, do you think that merely offering prayers, turning your face toward the sacred direction and standing in that posture is enough? Outwardly, it seems so. But in reality, this is a mighty declaration. Standing on the stage of religion, the Quran proclaims against ritualism that true righteousness, according to the divine law, is not found in merely facing east or west. The true path to God's standard lies beyond ritual, in values, in action, in justice, and in living faith. Religion focuses only on rituals, while deen does not. In madhab, religion, the entire emphasis is placed on whether the rituals are being performed correctly. The direction of the face, the details of posture, the exact manner of the prescribed acts are all scrutinized. For example, whether the hands are tied in the right place, how far they are raised, the distance between the feet, the angle formed in ruku, and whether all 5 points touch the ground in sujud. Further, attention is given to whether the words are pronounced correctly from the proper articulation points. All of these details are emphasized, yet the meanings of the words are not understood. The focus remains only on correct pronunciation. It is true that proper pronunciation is necessary for language, but the words themselves are vessels of meaning. If the meaning is absent, then it is like a shell without a kernel, Madame et baguette geride, an almond without its seed. The shell is necessary because it preserves the kernel, but if the kernel is missing, then what use is the shell? Thus, the shell is not the end in itself, the purpose is the establishment of the system. Beloved brothers, as soon as the matter of halal and haram arises, some say that the Quran lacks order, but I, in harmony with Iqbal, 1877-1938, say, Mahram nahi hai tu hi navahai raz ka. You are not the confidant of the melodies of mystery. In this arrangement, such order is perceived that I am overwhelmed with ecstasy. The special characteristic of the Quran, continuity, like a string of pearls. The Quran has this unique quality that from beginning to end it flows with coherence, like a string of pearls. This book is authored by God. It is not a collection of scattered verses, not a ghazal, where one couplet sings of the pleasures of union and the next laments separation. From start to finish, there is continuity. Here, the eye first sees those matters common in religions, what to eat, what not to eat, how to eat. As soon as this is mentioned, immediately the next point comes. Laysal bira and tuwalu hujuhakum, kibla al-mashliki wal-maghribi. Righteousness is not that you turn your faces toward the east or the west. Do not fall into the illusion that these particulars, these rituals, these formalities are ends in themselves. The true purpose is the ultimate goal, the destination, the result to which these are only means. Facing east or west is not the essence. For a traveler, a ticket is essential, but if you buy the ticket and keep it in your pocket while sitting at home, you will never reach Mecca. The Quran's miracle is to distinguish between means and ends. Thus it says, Laysal bira and tuwalu hujuhakum, kibla al-mashriki wal-maghribi. The path to expansion and salvation is not in turning faces east or west. Then comes the word bira. In our language, we only have one word, neki, virtue. Its meaning varies. At first, it is what a mother uses to frighten her child. Ay neki, oh ayapag, here comes virtue, run away. As one grows older, it becomes enno eni alladi neki hekoi, aneki vekteo kete kete tarichandie. This is Allah's blessing, see how far it reaches. And further, it comes to mean what we call a truly virtuous person, bara nek atmi. You know well what kind of image this brings to mind.
A person entangled in rituals falls into narrow-mindedness. Beloved brothers, the word neki, or virtue, is not originally Arabic. Here, the Quran uses the word bir, which means vastness, openness, and the expansiveness of life. Another word used is khair, whose root is the same as that of ikhtiyar, or choice. It refers to the expansion of human choices and capacities. In this verse, the Quran calls it bir. The path to the expansiveness of life is not found in being entangled in rituals. If one remains confined only to these, life shrinks within them. You will notice that many people consider these rituals as ends in themselves. Such people become narrow-minded, filled with suffocation, lacking openness in their character. If your feet are slightly closer together than prescribed, you will see how voices rise up against you in the mosque, sometimes even leading to accusations of disbelief. I recall many worshippers who eventually stopped going to the mosque because of such attitudes. One dear friend of mine experienced this. He was standing in prayer, and the person beside him broke his intention, quickly sat down, and noticed that my friend's trousers were slightly below the ankles. Hastily, he rolled them up to make them shorter, then stood again saying, Allahu Akbar. In his mind, he must have thought, what a great deed I have accomplished. But that deed was such that my friend never returned to the mosque afterward. This is the tragedy of being lost in the rituals. It breeds narrowness instead of the expansiveness of bir that the Quran speaks of. Beloved brothers, here the Quran uses the word bir. Notice how when people become entangled in these details and make them ends in themselves, narrow-mindedness arises. All disputes revolve around where the hands should be tied, whether they should be left open, whether hands must be raised to the ears before bowing. This leads to quarrels, fights, mosques being locked, even police reports. Hatred, revenge, and narrowness are born out of such obsessions. This is why the Quran chose the word bir here. It signifies vastness, openness, and the expansiveness of life. Such breadth of vision cannot emerge from being confined within the narrow boat of religious minutiae. Life is an ocean of freedom, limitless in scope. When life has expansiveness, one must not mistake rituals as ends in themselves. As I often say, this does not mean that rituals have no importance. They do have significance, but only as part of a larger system. For example, in the army, even a soldier's shoelaces must be tied properly, his belt fastened correctly, his uniform in order. This is discipline, but discipline exists within a system.
Once that soldier retires and returns to his village, he may still wear the uniform, tie the shoelaces neatly, fasten the belt, carry a stick instead of a rifle, and march left-right through the streets. But can he claim that he is fulfilling the same duty as he did in the army, protecting the nation from enemies? Of course not. This illustrates how mistaken it is to think that rituals alone constitute the essence of deen. The Quran's use of birr shows that true righteousness lies in the vastness of life, in values and purpose, not in being trapped within ritual details. Discipline in the Quran, the framework of life. The Quran emphasizes that discipline and order are essential, but they are not ends in themselves. It declares, ليس البر أن تولوا وجوهكم قبل المشرق والمغرب. Righteousness is not that you turn your faces toward the east or the west. The command to face the Kaaba wherever you are is indeed important, and it establishes order and unity. Yet the Quran immediately warns not to mistake this discipline as the ultimate goal. It is only a means, not the essence of birr, true righteousness. True birr is not confined to ritual orientation. The Quran clarifies that while distinguishing between halal and haram is necessary, the real foundation lies elsewhere. After mentioning these external forms, it shifts to the essence, the ideology, the inner conviction, which the Quran calls iman. وَلَكِنَ الْبِرَّ, but righteousness is. This verse presents a complete program. The first part is like the foundation of a building. Without a strong foundation, the structure cannot stand. In the same way, the Quran begins with iman, the ideological basis, upon which the entire system of life is built. The Quranic definition of iman and the way to attain it. According to the Quran, the foundation of the entire structure of righteous deeds, amal-e-salihah, is iman. Without this foundation, the building of deeds cannot stand firm. People often raise objections. They ask, one person believes in God, another does not, yet both do good works. Charity, hospitals, welfare. Is this not virtue? Indeed, such acts are good, but the Quran makes clear that iman is not merely saying God exists with the tongue. The Quran itself records that when asked, who created the heavens and the earth, people reply, God. When asked, by whose power do the forces of nature operate, they say, God's. They acknowledge God to this extent, yet the Quran asks, then why do they not believe in God? This shows that iman is something beyond verbal acknowledgement. Iman is conviction, a deep certainty that becomes the basis of action. Just as a scientist in his laboratory cannot work on a formula unless he has conviction in the truth of the basic principles of science, so too a believer cannot build righteous deeds without conviction in divine truth. The scientist may spend days and nights experimenting even when results are not visible. Others may say, you are wasting your time. He replies, no, the formula is true. If results are not appearing, the mistake is mine, not the principle. This unwavering certainty drives him forward. This is the meaning of iman in the Quran. It is not mere faith, belief, but conviction, yaqeen, a certainty that propels effort, struggle, and perseverance. It is the ocean without shore, the limitless sea, upon which the edifice of deeds is built. Iman as the guide to the destination. Beloved brothers, to reach any destination correctly, faith in a guiding instrument or leader becomes essential. When we stand at the seashore, we see boundaries, but once the ship sails into the deep ocean, there is no shore in sight. Miles upon miles, the eye sees nothing but water, no markers, no boundaries. Yet the ship moves straight on its course and reaches its destination. How? Because in front of the captain hangs a compass. Sitting in his cabin, he keeps his eyes on it, giving directions, a little to the right, a little to the left. By following this guidance, the ship arrives exactly at its intended port. The same is true for airplanes. Once airborne, there is no London, no New York, no Lahore visible. The sky is boundless without landmarks. Yet the plane flies from one city to another, arriving at the right place at the right time. How? Because the pilot trusts the instrument before him. If he did not have conviction in its accuracy, then neither the engine nor engineering could save the journey. This certainty in the instrument's reliability is what the Quran calls iman. It is the conviction that the guidance before you will lead to the right destination. This is not mere belief, but a living ideology, a guiding principle that directs the traveler through the boundless ocean of life toward the true goal. The ideology given by the Quran, like stars that never deceive. The ideology presented by the Quran is like the shining stars in the sky. It never deceives. The foundation of Iman is that the guidance being received is not like a weathercock that changes direction with the wind. One moment it points here, the next moment it points there. Such guidance is unreliable. The Quranic guidance does not change with circumstances. It never misleads. It never deceives. This is what the Quran describes. فَقَدْ اسْتَمْسَكَ بِالْعُرْوَةِ الْوُثْقَى لَا انْفِصَامَ لَهَا 256. He has grasped the firm handhold which will never break. When a nation turns away from non-divine systems and embraces conviction in the truth of God's system, making it the goal of its life, it has held on to a support that can never be broken. The Quran further declares, La infisama laha, 257. There is no breaking of it. Iman is that firm rope which once grasped will never deceive, will never break, and will always guide to the true destination. Iman as conviction, the foundation of righteous deeds. Beloved brothers, the Quran teaches that for its ideology to bear fruit, one must adopt methods and practices based on truth, which it calls amal-e-salihah, righteous deeds. This is what Iman means. Just as in scientific discoveries, conviction in the immutability of natural laws is the foundation, so too in life, conviction in divine guidance is essential. These laws are fixed, unchanging, and never deceptive. Consider how confidently you place a pot of water on the stove, like the gas, and know with certainty that within 5 minutes the water will boil. This assurance is Iman, conviction in the certainty of law. Without such conviction, no action can be taken. If action is attempted without conviction, it becomes habitat amaluhum, 917, wasted deeds. You may have the stove, the pot, the water, even the wood, but without a match or gas, nothing will happen. This is the futility of action without conviction. Ask a lost traveler, by evening, what does he gain except fatigue? He may even be farther from his destination than he was in the morning. Thus, Iman is conviction in God's guidance, the certainty that His program will lead to the right destination. If one follows it, the result is inevitable. This conviction is unbreakable, as the Quran says, La infisama laha, it will never break. This unwavering certainty, this conviction, is what the Quran calls Iman. Iman in Allah, faith in divine laws. Iman is the most fundamental concept. When we say Allah, it means conviction in the immutability of His laws. If faith were only a matter of saying Allah exists or Allah does not exist, then it would make no real difference. Religion often stops at this verbal acknowledgement. But Deen demands conviction, a firm belief that the laws of Allah are unchanging and will inevitably operate as He has declared. When Allah speaks, it signifies that human-made laws can change, but divine laws cannot. The universe is created by God. Examine its laws and see how immutable they are. In the same way, the laws He has given for human life are equally firm and unchanging. This is what it means to have faith in God. Faith in God means faith in His revelation, in His guidance. Belief in God without belief in His revelation is meaningless. True Iman is conviction in both, the existence of Allah and the certainty of His guidance through revelation. An example of a human-made religion, Brahmo Samaj. This is why faith in divine revelation is necessary. Without conviction in the guidance of Wahi, human beings attempt to construct religions of their own. One such example is the Brahmo Samaj. They claimed belief in God, and for worship they performed rituals, while for worldly affairs they gathered good teachings from wherever they found them. From their perspective, whatever seemed good was adopted, and then all such practices were collected together. But when examined closely, contradictions appeared. For instance, among the thugs, a notorious cult, a son could not enter the temple of the goddess until he committed his first murder. From the spoils of that first killing, 1/5 had to be offered in the temple. This was considered the highest virtue. Such a system could not endure. The Brahma Samaj failed because human-made religions built on selective practices and subjective notions of good lack the immutable foundation that only divine revelation provides. Revelation through the messenger, based on immutable principles from God. The meaning of immutable laws is wahi. Wahi means the medium through which these laws are revealed to us. The one who brings them is called Rasul, who are the messengers. Every human cannot receive revelation directly. This is the method chosen, and I have already explained why such a method was adopted, so there is no need to repeat it. Those through whom these laws came, what is the faith regarding them? They were the messengers who brought the laws. Reflect on how important the components of faith are. It has been said, do not mistake these messengers for God. Faith in Risala means that they are not at the level of divinity. They are only messengers, delivering God's message to us. You see all these things in between. These components of faith exist to safeguard the purity of divinity. In religion, these components are often turned into gods themselves. In Deen, the matter becomes clear. One fundamental component of faith is belief in Allah. Its meaning is faith in His wahi or guidance. Where will this be found? In His book. Therefore, faith in the book is essential. And since this book was delivered by the messengers, faith in the messengers is also necessary. The messengers are those who deliver God's message, not God themselves.
Natural forces made into gods, while the Quran calls them angels and places them in submission to man. In the world of religion, these malaika were turned into gods and goddesses. Whether it was the great philosophers of Greece or the ignorance found among Hindus, all of them made the forces of nature into deities. The Quran rejects these false beliefs. The malaika are in fact the forces of nature placed in submission before man. They belong to the realm of command, alam al-amr, and are simply means through which God's program is carried to completion, nothing more. Faith remains only upon that which is called wahi, the guidance of God. Belief in God means belief in His guidance, that He has given immutable laws. This is the true relationship between man and God. The laws are preserved in the book, and the messenger is the one who delivers the book. As for these forces, which appear so immense and formidable, they are nothing but God-created powers to bring His program into effect. Faith in the hereafter, belief in the manifestation. Of results, the first thing is law, and after that comes the hereafter. The meaning of Aqidah is the result. Conviction in the outcome of law is the essence of faith. The law is that the result will inevitably manifest. This is called Aqidah. Every action will certainly produce a determined result. This, beloved brothers, is faith. Reflect. Without this conviction, can any structure of action be established? A person cannot even prepare for action without it. And if faith rests upon false principles, then no matter how much effort is made, those efforts will be wasted. But if faith rests upon the true law, then even lesser effort will produce correct results. These results are called Aqidah, the thing that comes at the end. Every process in life ultimately concludes in its outcome. Belief in that final outcome is faith in the hereafter. Now, where does this final result appear? It may manifest in this physical life, in this worldly existence, or it may appear later. Life continues in continuity, and in the hereafter, this reality also unfolds. The hereafter is simply the name given to the ultimate consequence of action. The question of when it appears is irrelevant, but appear it will, inevitably. Ultimately, man must have faith in the ideology presented by the Quran. This is the ideology. This is faith. Reflect whether in practical life you need this faith or not. In truth, without it you cannot take even a single step. You cannot move forward. And if faith is placed upon false laws or false means, then when you pursue them, the outcome will also appear.
That too is the hereafter. The result of correct guidance will manifest before you. That too is the hereafter. The final outcome of wrong deeds is hell, while the final outcome of right deeds is paradise. See how clear this matter is. There is no need for logical complexities. In daily life, we observe that without faith, one cannot even walk a single step, whether faith is upon falsehood or upon truth. This is the ideology which is called faith. The Quran says, لَيْسَ الْبِرَّ أَن تُوَلُّوا وُجُوهَكُمْ قِبَلَ الْمَشْرِقِ وَالْمَغْرِبِ وَلَكِنَّ الْبِرَّ مَنْ آمَنَ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ وَالْمَلَائِكَةِ وَالْكِتَابِ وَالنَّبِيِّينَ. 277. The standard of faith as determined by the Quran. Beloved brothers, in verse 277, the Quran mentions the 5 essential components of faith: Allah, the angels, revelation, the messengers, and the hereafter. These are the pillars. Denial of any one of them is disbelief. Faith must be in the manner the Quran itself has prescribed, not merely by verbal acknowledgement. It is not enough to say, we believe in God and in the messengers. The Quran declares, فَإِنْ آمَنُوا بِمِثْلِ مَا آمَنْتُمْ بِهِ فَقَدْ اهْتَدُوا. If they believe as you believe, then they are rightly guided. This means that true faith is only when belief is in accordance with the Quran standard. Otherwise, merely claiming belief in God is insufficient. The whole world, except for a few atheists, says they believe in God. The West too calls itself believers in God. They even gather under this banner, calling one another to unite as believers in God. But the Quran does not recognize such belief. This is deception. Why? Because their deeds do not produce the results that faith demands. How can the Quran accept them as true believers when their actions fail to manifest the outcomes of faith? Thus, faith in these 5 components is the foundation. Once this foundation is established, the next question arises: what comes after this? That is where the Quran leads us, from conviction to righteous action, from belief to results.
The condition of faith among us and its result. Among us, faith has been reduced to something very limited. A testimony of this was seen recently when someone was asked, "What is the proof that you are a Muslim?" He replied, "I married twice." His meaning was that at the time of marriage, he had recited the kalima. Thus, for us, faith has become nothing more than the kalima, and that too in the times before the modern age. In today's age, even in marriage contracts, the kalima is often not recited. At the final stage of life, when nothing else remains, the kalima is recited at the time of death. So faith among us has been reduced to this ritual alone. On top of this, the pillars of Islam, Arkan al-Islam, are placed. Now think, suppose the foundation was sound, and upon it you erected the pillars. Then a building would be formed, protecting you from rain, heat, cold, and even thieves. People say, because 5 pillars have been erected. But these pillars were meant to support a roof, to complete a structure. Here, however, there is no roof. There is not even a clear foundation of what faith truly means. What is called faith is not understood, and upon this vague base, only pillars are erected, without a building, without shelter, without purpose. Beloved brothers, the Quran makes it clear. لَيْسَ الْبِرَّ أَن تُوَلُّوا وُجُوهَكُمْ قِبَلَ الْمَشْرِقِ وَالْمَغْرِبِ. Righteousness is not that you turn your faces toward the east or the west. This means that mere rituals and formalities are not the path of expansion, kushad. The real foundation is conviction, complete certainty in the immutability of God's laws. Faith, iman, is this conviction. If I act according to His guidance, the result will inevitably manifest. That is the firm base. After laying the foundation, the Quran moves to action. What is bir, true righteousness? It is not only belief, but the test of deeds. The verse continues, وَآتَ الْمَالَ عَلَى حُبِّهِ, and he gives wealth despite his love for it. This is the great test. Wealth has immense attraction, yet righteousness lies in overcoming that pull and giving it away for the sake of truth and justice. That is the path of expansion, the proof of conviction. Thus, bir is not ritual, but the combination of firm faith and God's immutable laws and the courage to act upon them, even against the strongest human desires.
The condition of faith and wealth in Quranic ideology. According to the Quran, the acquisition of wealth is natural, and its results are obvious to everyone. When money is in hand, one knows it can buy a house, land, or a vehicle. These outcomes are visible and require no revelation, no messenger, no book, and no faith. Every person, even a child, understands that wealth can fulfill material needs. The real test, however, lies in spending wealth. When one gives away what is in possession, the world calls it foolishness. Here, human reasoning fails, and this is where faith and divine guidance become essential. Revelation explains the unseen result of giving wealth. The Quran declares, "Alladhi yutti malahu yatazakka," he who gives his wealth to purify himself. Taking wealth nourishes the body, and this everyone knows. Giving wealth, however, nourishes the self, the inner personality, and this no one could know without God's guidance. Thus, in Quranic ideology, acquiring wealth is natural, but spending it in the right way is obligatory. The true growth of man lies not in what he keeps, but in what he gives. Wealth given in the path of truth becomes the means of purification and development of the self. This is why faith is the foundation. Without conviction in God's immutable laws, one cannot believe that giving wealth produces real, eternal results.
The need for revelation beyond the physical body. Beloved brothers, here is precisely where wahi, revelation, becomes necessary. Eating bread and its effects on the body can be explained by doctors, machines, or scientists. The physical outcome is clear: nourishment of the body. For this, belief in God or faith in a messenger is not required. But what happens when wealth is given away? The world says, the money has left your hand, nothing remains. Yet something profound does remain, but this cannot be explained by science, medicine, or physical laws. No scientist, no doctor, no bodily mechanism can reveal what is gained through giving. Only revelation can disclose this truth. It tells us that beyond the body lies the vat, the self, the inner personality, which continues even after the body disintegrates and perishes. This self is nourished and developed through giving, not through taking. Thus, wahi unveils the law that transcends the physical. While food sustains the body, giving sustains and elevates the self, the part of man that endures beyond death. This is why faith and revelation is indispensable, for it alone reveals the unseen results of actions that science cannot measure.
The scale of profit and loss in Quranic ideology. Beloved brothers, the Quran presents a completely different measure of profit and loss. Faith, iman, is not simply acknowledging that God exists somewhere on the throne. True faith is conviction in his immutable law. Material gain from wealth is temporary. How much can you accumulate, and for how long will it last? But when wealth is given away, it nurtures that part of man which does not perish with death, the zat, self, personality, that continues beyond. This is the essence of faith. The Quran emphasizes this point after laying the foundation of faith. It says, وَآتَى الْمَالَ عَلَى حُبِّهِ, and he gives wealth despite his love for it. This phrase, ala hubbihi, is profound. Everyone knows the attraction of wealth. No guidance is needed to understand that money is desirable. Even a child knows that with money he can buy sweets or a balloon. The pull of wealth is universally recognized. But to give wealth away, despite this attraction, is something no natural law or worldly reasoning can explain. Only divine revelation reveals the unseen result, that giving wealth develops and purifies the self. This is why faith in God's guidance is indispensable. Thus, in Quranic ideology, the true scale of profit and loss is not in what you keep, but in what you give. The attraction of wealth is natural, but overcoming it and spending for others is the real test of faith, the point where revelation guides man beyond the limits of worldly logic. The foundation of the Quranic economic system, the concept of infaq. The economic system presented by the Quran is firmly built upon the concept of infaq, spending, giving. Throughout the Quran, the emphasis is repeated: infaq, infaq, infaq. In contrast, worldly systems are based on accumulation, gathering, hoarding, and storing wealth. The Quran describes this materialistic lifestyle. جَمَعَ مَالًا وَعَدَّدَهُ. He collects wealth and counts it again and again. وَجَمَعَ فَأَوْعَى. He hoards it in a bag and ties it tightly. This is the natural tendency of man, driven by ala hubbihi, the attraction of wealth. No revelation is needed to understand this. Every person knows the pull of money. But the Quran introduces a radically different principle. Instead of awa, hoarding in a closed bag, it uses the word nafaq. A nafaq is a bag open at both ends. What is put in from one side flows out from the other. This is the imagery of infaq. Thus, infaq in the Quran does not simply mean spending in the ordinary sense. It signifies a system where wealth is not locked away, but continuously flows through society, nurturing and sustaining others. This is the foundation of the Quranic economic order: circulation, not hoarding, growth of the collective, not selfish accumulation.
Wealth in the Quranic perspective: circulation, not hoarding. Wealth in the Quran is not meant to be hoarded. The very word dola means something that remains in circulation. The moment circulation stops, it ceases to be wealth. For this circulation, the Quran has laid down a law. Kay la yakuna dulatan bain al-agniya'i minkum, 59:7, so that it may not merely circulate among the rich among you. This establishes that wealth must flow, but not remain confined to the upper classes. The Quran contrasts two approaches. One is wajama'a fa'aw'a, 70:18, hoarding in a bag, tied tightly so nothing escapes. The other is infaq, derived from nafaq, a bag open at both ends, where what enters from one side flows out from the other. This symbolizes wealth acquired, but kept open for the needs of others. Thus the Quran says, wa'ata al-mala ala hubihi, 277. He gives wealth despite his love for it. The attraction of wealth is natural, yet true faith requires overcoming that pull and making it available for others. It further declares, Len tanalu al-birra hatta tunfiku mimma tuhibuna, 392. You will never attain birra, true expansion, righteousness, until you spend out of what you love most. This means that the path to life's fastness and real virtue lies in opening up those possessions which hold the greatest attraction, so they may nurture others. Without infaq, birra cannot be attained. If translated as virtue, then virtue itself is impossible without it. And the Quran adds, ala hubihi dawi al-kurba, 277. Despite love for wealth, he gives it for the care of others, even if they are his close relatives. Transforming individual life into collective life, the system of infaq. Beloved brothers, to transform individual life into collective life, the entire system must change. The concept of infaq in the Quran is for this very purpose of organization and order. You are commanded to practice it individually until such time that a complete system is established, where the responsibility for the nourishment, capabilities, and development of all individuals falls under that collective order. The Quran begins with Dhawil Qurba, 277. Though its literal meaning is relatives, the deeper sense is those around you. Start from your immediate surroundings. Imagine breaking the walls between your house and the houses on either side, making 3 houses into one. This is Dhawil Qurba, those near to you. Then comes Wal Yatama, 277, those who are left alone in society. While Dhawil Qurba are near and not alone, the Yatama are those with no one near them. Become their close ones so they are not left solitary. Next is Wal Masakin, 277. A person who was working yesterday but an accident rendered him immobile. His movement turned into stillness. His running vehicle stopped. Help him with a push. Give him the support he needs to restart. This is the miskin. Then Wabne Sabil, 277. The Quran extends the scope further. It is not limited to your own group. Even the traveler passing by, deprived of provisions, must be cared for. Ibn as-Sabil refers to such a traveler whose need halts him and who comes to you.
thus both familiar and unfamiliar people are included. He too becomes your close one. Finally, was-sa'ilin, 277. These are those who work and strive, but whose earnings do not meet their needs, leaving a shortfall. They are called sa'ilin. This is the Quranic order, beginning from those nearest to you, extending to the orphan, the needy, the traveler, and even the one who asks because his effort does not suffice. Through infaq, the individual life is woven into the collective, ensuring that no one is left behind. A society that does not shoulder the responsibility of fulfilling human needs is a hellish society. Beloved brothers, in today's society, no one concerns themselves with whether what a person receives is enough to meet his needs or not. The prevailing attitude is, 3 rupees were fixed and I pay him before his sweat dries. The employer, even if he calls himself just and fair, considers his duty fulfilled by paying the agreed wage. But the real question is, can those 3 rupees buy flour for his children? He says, that is not my responsibility. And in this society, it is not considered anyone's responsibility to ensure that needs are actually met. Even today, a so-called just society is defined as one where wages are paid regularly. At best, it is praised if the worker is not cheated and receives his agreed amount. But whether those wages are sufficient to cover his necessities is not taken into account. The Quran, however, teaches differently. It places responsibility on society to ensure that every individual's needs are fulfilled. It explains that sa'il does not mean beggar in its original sense. It means one whose needs are not fully met, whose requirements remain unfulfilled. Thus, whoever seeks birr, true righteousness, expansion of life, must take upon themselves the duty of ensuring that what is given is not just a wage, but something that actually fulfills the needs of the individual and his family. This is the Quranic standard of justice and collective responsibility. Al-Adl and Al-Ihsan, the Quranic system of action. The Quran has used the word ihsan alongside action. It says, Inna Allaha ya'muru bil-adl, 1690. Allah commands that you deal with everyone with justice. Justice means that what has been agreed upon should be given, but after that it is necessary to see whether any deficiency remains. To fill that deficiency, it is said, Wal ihsani, 1690, that after justice, whatever need remains must also be fulfilled, and this too is the duty of society. Thus, immediately after mentioning dhawil qurba, wal yatama, wal masakin, wabn as-sabili, the Quran adds, was-sa'ilina wa fir riqabi, 277. This refers to those in need whose earnings are not sufficient for their requirements, and to those who, because of their dependence, have been made subservient to others. This is the foundation of respect for human dignity. After fulfilling physical needs, one must look further to ensure that no person remains in a condition where another exploits his necessity to enslave him. Wherever such a situation exists, it becomes your duty to use your wealth to liberate him from his dependence. Were the wars of the Prophet ﷺ defensive or aggressive, defensive or offensive? In reality, the question itself dissolves when we look at the evidence. The Prophet ﷺ's letter to the king of Persia, Kisra, makes the matter clear. In that letter he wrote, Your landlords are committing such oppression upon your farmers, and there is no one to rescue them from these injustices. I warn you, if these landlords do not desist from their tyranny, and the burden of their crimes will fall upon your shoulders, and for that we will have to come. Now decide for yourself, are such wars defensive or offensive? When the Muslims had settled in Medina and no immediate enemy remained, the Quran addressed them. You are sitting comfortably, feeling secure, thinking there is no fear anymore. But do you not hear the cries of the weak who are calling out, O God, deliver us from this town of oppressors. Send us a protector. Send us a helper from yourself. The Quran reminded them that these oppressed people were calling upon God and that it was their duty to rise in response. If God had willed, he could have destroyed the oppressors with a tremor or calamity, but instead he commanded his servants to act because they are Allah's soldiers. Thus, the wars of the Prophet ﷺ were neither mere defensive reactions nor aggressive conquests. They were struggles to liberate the oppressed, to respond to the cries of those who had no helper, and to establish justice where tyranny prevailed. Beloved brothers, when an oppressed person calls upon a state for help, it is not the head of state who goes himself, but he sends the army. In the same way, the believer is God's soldier. Whoever calls upon God for help, it becomes the duty of God's soldier to reach out and assist. When the subject of jihad arises, this is its essence. It is not, as some imagine, that God himself intervenes directly every time, by sending a storm, or by blinding enemies with a handful of dust, or by drowning them. Rather, God says, "Do you not hear? They are calling upon me. Why are you sitting idle?" The Quran reminds us of the attitude of the Israelites who said, فَاذْهَبْ أَنْتَ وَرَبُّكَ فَقَاتِلَا إِنَّا هَاهُنَا قَاعِدُونَ. Go you and your Lord and fight. We are sitting here. They waited passively for results while refusing to act. But the Quran makes it clear, when the oppressed cry out, it is the duty of the believers to rise. This is the meaning of وَفِي الرِّقَابِ, to liberate necks caught in bondage. It is not limited to ropes tied physically around the neck. There are countless forms of bondage. Think deeply. How many kinds of ropes exist in which necks are bound? Even those necks that appear proudly raised may in reality be tied by invisible cords, unseen chains of oppression, exploitation, or dependence. The Quran calls upon believers to recognize these visible and invisible forms of bondage and to act as God's soldiers, breaking those chains and responding to the cries of the oppressed. The purpose of a believer's life, the importance of covenants, and the meaning of trust and betrayal. According to the Quran, the purpose of a believer's life is to remove any kind of rope or bondage that may be around another human being's neck. This is expressed in وَفِي الرِّقَابِ 2:177. Then it says وَأَقَامَ الصَّلَاةِ 2:177, meaning that it is necessary to establish a society in which individuals, by themselves, follow the laws of God and walk in accordance with them. Moving further, the Quran declares وَآتَ الزَّكَاةِ 2:177, to arrange for the nourishment and development of humanity. Thus, true bir, righteousness, expansion, rests upon two fundamental principles: establishing the system of salah so that all needs of growth are continuously provided, and when mufuna bi'ahdihim idha ahadu 2:177, fulfilling their covenants when they make them. This principle covers all forms of commitments, the individual promises we make, the collective treaties between communities or nations, and essentially every situation where one gives their word and another places trust upon it. The Quran makes it clear that honoring such trust is a foundational element of faith and of the believer's mission in life. A promise or treaty at first appears to be just words. Yes, I will do this for you. But beneath those words lies something deeper. The other person gains confidence and trust that his matter is now taken care of because you have assumed responsibility. This trust is what the Quran calls amana. The word amana itself comes from peace, security. When you give someone your word, he feels secure in his difficulty, knowing that you will fulfill it. The opposite of amana is khiyana, betrayal. The Arabs use this word in a vivid way. Imagine a well with a pulley, a rope, and a bucket full of water. You are pulling it up against the force of gravity, relying entirely on the strength of the rope. You are confident that in just a few more pulls, the bucket will reach your hands. Your trust rests completely on that rope. But if the rope suddenly snaps midway, not only does the bucket fall back, sometimes even the person pulling may tumble into the well. This breaking of trust, this snapping of the rope in the middle of tension, was called khiyana by the Arabs. In the same way, when you give someone a promise or covenant and then break it, it is like that rope breaking while the bucket is being pulled up. The Quran highlights the gravity of this matter by placing it alongside the most fundamental principles. وَأَقَامَ الصَّلَاةَ وَآتَ الزَّكَاةَ وَالْمُفُونَ بِعَهْدِهِمْ إِذَا عَاهَدُوا. They establish prayer, they give zakat, and they fulfill their covenants when they make them. This shows that the entire system of life rests on mutual trust. Without it, society collapses, just as the rope snapping causes the bucket to fall. In Quranic ideology, honoring promises and covenants is not a minor moral duty. It is a foundational pillar of collective order and human dignity.
What is lawlessness? It is the collapse of mutual trust. The meaning of peace, is that you can move about with complete assurance, surrounded by people, without fear or anxiety. In a crowded fair, among thousands of strangers, you walk freely. You pass through the busy streets of Anarkali or walk alone at night, yet feel secure. This security exists because of trust, confidence in one another. When suddenly you say, I cannot go out anymore, what has changed? The same people are around you, but your trust in them has vanished. You fear that someone may stab you at any moment. Human life is collective life. Man is a social being. He must live together with others, and this coexistence is only possible on the basis of trust and confidence. The moment trust disappears, society collapses. Not only outside, even within the home, life becomes unbearable. If trust between husband and wife is lost, one cannot even sleep peacefully at night. This is the meaning of وَالْمُفُونَ بِعَهْدِهِمْ إِذَا آحَدُوا, those who fulfill their covenants when they make them. A covenant is not only formal treaties and agreements, it includes every step of life where mutual trust and confidence are involved. This is a fundamental principle, and the Quran places it among the paths of birr, true righteousness.
The Quranic meaning of birr, establishing the system of salah and zakah. The Quran uses the word birr not in the limited sense of doing good deeds, but in the sense of creating a collective order where human needs are continuously met. If translated merely as virtue or piety, the depth of the concept is lost. Bir belongs to those who, despite their love for wealth, keep it open for the needs of others, making no distinction between their own and strangers. It includes the one who is near, the one left alone, the one whose business has stopped, the one whose needs remain unfulfilled, and even those caught in forms of bondage. For this, the Quran says, Aqama as-salah. This is not an individual ritual, but the establishment of a system in which people by themselves follow the divine laws. Alongside it, wa'ata as-zakah, arranging for the nourishment and development of humanity. Thus, birr is realized when a society is established where the system of salah ensures order and discipline, and the system of zakah ensures that resources flow for the growth of all. This is not charity in isolation, nor ritual in repetition, but a collective framework that guarantees human development. For such a system, mutual trust is indispensable. Hence the Quran adds, وَالْمُوفُونَ بِعَهْدِهِمْ إِذَا عَاهَدُوا, 277, those who fulfill their covenants when they make them. The entire system rests upon this trust, for without it, neither salah nor zakah can function as living institutions of birr. Beloved brothers, when a system is established to fulfill human needs and ensure freedom, its self-interested groups, whether inside the country or outside, will inevitably clash with it. In such times, this religion is not the religion of beggars resting on pillows, nor the faith of the idol worshipper confined to the mosque. It is the faith of the mujahideen. At this point, the Quran says, وَالصَّابِرِينَ فِي الْبَأْسَاءِ وَالضَّرَّاءِ وَحِينَ الْبَأْسِ, those who remain steadfast in hardship, adversity, and at the time of battle. When opposing forces prepare for war, when calamities strike, when disasters occur, when famine or flood comes, they do not lose courage or flee. They are the sabirin. In Urdu or Punjabi, sabr is often taken to mean sitting idly with folded hands or helplessness, as in the saying, there is no option but patience. But in the Quran, sabr does not mean resignation. It means steadfastness, courage, endurance, and standing firm without cowardice or weakness. Whether a sudden crisis arises within society or an external force attempts to break the system, the sabirin are those who, with determination and perseverance, stand their ground. This is the Quranic concept of patience, resilience, and strength in the face of trials. Mere rituals do not cure a non-Quranic society. After explaining the principles of birr, the Quran addresses the question that was in people's hearts. Who is a true believer, and what is the proof of his faith? The answer is clear. One who merely performs rituals or utters a few words with the tongue is neither a believer, nor is that action true amal, nor is it ber, nor is it taqwa. The Quran lays out the real criteria. After describing them, it concludes, Ula'ika ilazina sadaku. These are the ones who have proven truthful in their claim of faith. Thus, the truth of the claim is demonstrated by results. If these qualities are absent, then faith has no benefit because it is not expressed in action. It is like memorizing thousands of formulas or knowing countless prescriptions but never applying them to a patient. Unless the medicine is administered and its effect seen, the knowledge is useless. In the same way, faith without practice is empty, mere words without transformation. This is why the Quran insists that the believer's truthfulness is proven through lived results, not through ritual performance alone.
Self-deception destroys human potential. The Quran says, أُولَٰئِكَ الَّذِينَ صَدَقُوا. These are the ones who have proven truthful. The question arises, who is truly muttaqi, God-conscious? The Quran answers, وَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُتَّقُونَ. These are the ones who guard the laws of God. But this must be demonstrated in action. It then warns, لَيْسَ الْبِرَّ أَن تُوَلُّوا وُجُوهَكُمْ قِبَلَ الْمَشْرِقِ وَالْمَغْرِبِ. Bir is not that you turn your faces towards the east or the west. In other words, do not deceive yourselves into thinking that performing every ritual detail precisely, reciting every formula correctly, is enough to prove faith. If the prayer does not produce the result it is meant to, then it is not accepted. The real question is, what outcome did not occur? Why was the prayer ineffective? The burden of proof lies on those who claim it was valid merely because the ritual was performed. The Quran declares, أُولَٰئِكَ الَّذِينَ صَدَقُوا. These are the ones who have shown their claim to be true. The acceptance of prayer is proven not by ritual precision, but by the transformation it brings. Only when its results manifest in life does the claim of faith become genuine.
Religion's world keeps man in self-deception, the Quranic criterion of results. Beloved brothers, in the world of religion, man often remains trapped in self-deception. He repeats a few words, performs a few rituals, and convinces himself that his duty is fulfilled, and that is all. There is no test, no criterion, no measure to verify whether anything has truly been achieved. In contrast, Deen provides a measure for every action. Each deed is weighed, and its results manifest. If the expected result does not appear, then one must pause and reflect, just as a doctor must reconsider when his prescription fails to reduce a fever. Either the diagnosis was wrong, the prescription faulty, or the medicine did not reach properly. The proof of the claim lies in the outcome. Religion without results is like a careless physician who rushes through hundreds of patients, scribbling notes without checking whether the treatment worked. But Deen demands accountability. The claim of faith must be validated by constructive outcomes. Thus the Quran declares, وَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُتَّقُونَ 277. These are the ones who are truly God-conscious. They are those who guard the divine laws and thereby protect themselves from dangers and pitfalls. This is the external defense. And after this, the Quran turns to the inner sphere, the internal dimension of life, showing that true taqwa is not ritual satisfaction, but the lived results of God's law in both outer and inner realms. The importance of human life, an immutable reality in the Quranic perspective. The very first thing to which the Quran gives importance is the value of human life. In its view, human life is a most precious treasure. Why does the Quran attach such significance to it? Because its ultimate purpose is the development of the human self, the nafs, the khudi, the personality. At the stage of life where evolution has reached, the growth of the human self can only take place while it resides within the body. The body is the medium for this development. Therefore, the Quran values this medium highly. Just as a traveler values his horse or a soldier his weapon, The body is essential for the journey of human development. Yet the Quran does not consider the body an end in itself. It is a means. When the body becomes an obstacle to the higher purpose, the growth of the human self, then the Quran declares that sacrificing the body for that purpose is the true path of righteousness. Iqbal expressed this beautifully. Hai kabhi jaan or kabhi taslima jaan hai zindagi. Sometimes life is to preserve the self, and sometimes it is to surrender the self. Preservation of self is absolutely necessary for the development of the human personality. If preservation itself becomes an obstacle in the path of that development, then sacrificing it becomes essential. Human life is of immense value, and the Quran gives it supreme importance. It says, Man katala nafsan bi khayri nafsin o fasadin fil ardi faka'annama katala nasa jami'a. Whoever kills a person unjustly, except in retribution for murder or for spreading corruption in the land, it is as though he has killed all of humanity. And in contrast, وَمَنْ أَحْيَاهَا فَكَأَنَّمَا أَحْيَا النَّاسَ جَمِيعًا. Whoever saves a life, it is as though he has saved all of humanity. Thus, the Quran places extraordinary value on human life. In light of this, it commands, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الْقِصَاصُ فِي الْقَتْلَى. O you who believe, prescribed for you is retribution in cases of murder. To preserve peace in society, the protection of human life is indispensable.
Protection of human life and the role of social system. Whether it is the question of safeguarding human life or the development of the self and personality, a social system is an essential component. For the protection of life, it is true that I am responsible for safeguarding my own life and you are responsible for yours. But within collective life, no individual can fully arrange for his own protection. This is the responsibility of the entire society. Therefore, the Quran declares, if lawlessness arises, or if someone takes the law into his own hands and unjustly takes another's life, then the law must ensure that the killer is punished by society. Such an act is considered a crime against the system itself, not merely against the individuals involved. This is the Quran's principle. It does not say to the heirs of the murdered person, go and take revenge yourselves, protect yourselves on your own. Rather, it commands, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, kutiba alaykumul qisas. O you who believe, prescribed for you is retribution in cases of murder. Thus, it is the duty of the believing society that wherever a life is unjustly taken, the responsibility of enforcing qisas rests upon the collective system.
The Quranic meaning of qisas. Here, the word qisas appears. Commonly, it is translated as taking a life or punishing by death, but its true meaning is different. It means to pursue the accused or criminal until he is finally caught. The root qisas, kaf sad sad, means to follow step by step. Thus, qisas signifies that society collectively declares to every criminal, where can you go? You cannot escape us. It is the responsibility of the community to track, pursue, and apprehend the offender. In Arab tradition, qisas was like the work of trackers who followed footprints until they found the culprit. Similarly, in our own region, Montgomery, now Sahiwal, there were koji, professional trackers who identified and pursued suspects. This was the practical sense of qisas. The Quran makes it clear, when someone is murdered, the deceased is gone, but the real burden falls on those left behind. Not only do they suffer the loss of their loved one, but they also face the heavy responsibility of ensuring that the killer and his accomplices are caught, brought to court, and punished. This becomes a torment for the survivors. The anecdote illustrates how victims' families often suffer further distress in the pursuit of justice. The Quran therefore establishes qisas as a collective duty of society, not merely personal revenge, but a system of justice where the community itself ensures that the criminal is pursued, apprehended, and held accountable. The Quran establishes principles that eliminate the need for lengthy legal codes. Beloved brothers, the Quran declares, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu kutiba alaykumul qisas. O you who believe, prescribed for you is retribution in cases of murder. This responsibility does not fall upon the individual whose wealth or life has been taken. The matter is not left to personal revenge. It is the duty of the entire society to safeguard the life and property of every member. If one person's life is lost, it means the society has failed in its duty, and it must rise to correct that failure. People ask, make a list of Quranic laws, but the Quran does not provide endless lists, it gives principles. For example, this single principle, Kutiba alaykumul qisasu fil qatla, underlies the entire legal framework regarding murder. From this principle, detailed regulations naturally emerge. Notice that the Quran does not tell the victim, his heirs, or the oppressed to take revenge themselves. Instead, it commands society to act. To the oppressed, it says, وَلَا تَقْتِلُوا النَّفْسَ الَّتِي حَرَّمَ اللَّهُ إِلَّا بِالْحَقِّ. Do not kill the soul which Allah has made sacred, except by right. And further, وَمَنْ قُتِلَ مَظْلُومًا. Whoever is killed unjustly. The Quran first distinguishes between killing bil-haq, by right, through justice, and killing unjustly. Not every killing is condemned. The lawful execution of a murderer is itself bil-haq.
In a Quranic society, no individual is left without support. Every person is a guardian of the other. The Quran says, وَمَنْ قُتِلَ مَظْلُومًا فَقَدْ جَعَلْنَا لِوَلِيِّهِ سُلْطَانًا. Whoever is killed unjustly, we have granted his heir authority. This means that the one who remains behind should not think, my family member is gone, I am left alone, I have no one to listen to me. The Quran declares that strength and support for him comes from the society itself, from the Islamic government. For the heirs of the oppressed who are left alone, the Quran says, we have made you their sultan, their authority, their power. Outwardly, it may seem that the bereaved person has no one left, but the Quran assures, do not fear. The entire society has been established so that it becomes your supporter. Innahu kana mansura. He indeed has been granted support. People may think that the oppressed have no one, but they must know that God has appointed society itself as their helper, giving them strength, backing, and protection. This is the meaning of يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم القصاص في القتلى. O you who believe, prescribed for you is retribution in cases of murder.
The nature of conventional translations regarding Quranic verses on justice and equality. The Quran sets forth a principle of justice and equality in the words, Al-Hurru bil-Hurri, wal-Abdu bil-Abdi, wal-Untha bil-Untha, 2:178. This means that in matters of crime and punishment, no distinction should be made between the status of the criminal and the victim. Whether the criminal is powerful and the victim weak, both are to be treated equally, for every human life, whether of a free man or a slave, a woman or a man, is equally valuable. However, conventional translations often render this as a free man for a free man, a slave for a slave, a woman for a woman. Such a translation distorts the meaning. It implies that if a slave kills a free man, then another free man must be killed in return, leaving the slave untouched. Or if a free man kills a slave, then instead of punishing the free man, another slave should be executed. Similarly, if a man kills a woman, the man cannot be punished. Instead, another woman must be found to execute. This interpretation leads to absurd and unjust consequences. The Quran's intent is entirely different. It establishes the principle of absolute equality and justice, without any concessions or favoritism. The verse ensures that in cases of murder, no one can escape punishment because of social status. Even if the village chief, Chowdhury, commits murder, he himself must face the penalty. It is not permissible to substitute his servants or tenants in his place. No one can be punished in place of another.
Clarification of the law of blood money, diyat, and the misconception in our society. The Quran says, Allah taziru waziratun wizra ukhra, 53:38. No bearer of burden shall bear the burden of another. This is the demand of justice. Then it states, فَمَنْ أُفِيَ لَهُ مِنْ أَخِيهِ شَيْءٌ فَإِتِّبَاعٌ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَأَدَاءٌ إِلَيْهِ بِإِحْسَانٍ, 2:178. If one's brother grants him some remission, then let there be a fair follow-up and payment to him with kindness. The meaning is that if among the heirs of the slain person someone forgives, then the matter should be settled fairly and the deficiency compensated with goodness. From this portion of the Quran, however, a distorted law has arisen in our society, known as diyat or blood money. According to this, in any case of murder, the heirs of the victim are given the right to accept money from the killer and pardon them. This practice leads to grave disorder. For example, a man may instigate the killing of his own brother. Then, as the legal heir of the murdered person, he is allowed to accept money from the killer and forgive him. In this way, the crime is reduced to a financial transaction, and the murderer escapes punishment. Such a system breeds anarchy in matters of murder. It allows personal enmities and conspiracies to flourish, turning justice into a commodity for sale. The Quran's principle is clear. Justice cannot be compromised, nor can the burden of crime be shifted or bought off. The wrongful interpretation of diyat undermines the very foundation of social order.
Explanation of blood money and the Quran's distinction between types of killing. The Quran makes clear that no one can bear the burden of another. أَلَّا تَزِرُ وَازِرَةٌ وِزْرَ أُخْرَى 53:38. Justice demands that responsibility remains with the one who committed the act. It then states, فَمَنْ عُفِيَ لَهُ مِنْ أَخِيهِ شَيْءٌ فَاتِّبَاعٌ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَأَدَاءٌ إِلَيْهِ بِإِحْسَانٍ 2:78. This means that if the heirs of the slain person grant some remission, then the matter should be settled fairly and compensation given with kindness. The Quran distinguishes between two types of killing. One is qatl amd, intentional killing, where someone deliberately murders another. The other is qatl khata, accidental killing, where there was no intention to kill but through error or negligence, death occurred. The Quran says, وَمَا كَانَ لِمُؤْمِنٍ أَن يَقْتُلَ مُؤْمِنًا إِلَّا خَطَأً 4:92, showing that accidental killing is recognized separately. For intentional killing, it declares, وَمَن يَقْتُلْ مُؤْمِنًا مُتَعَمِّدًا 4:93. In the case of accidental killing, the Quran prescribes فَتَحْرِيرُ رَقَبَةٍ مُؤْمِنَةٍ وَدِيَةٍ مُسَلَّمَةٍ إِلَى أَهْلِهِ 4:92. This means freeing a believing slave and paying blood money to the family of the slain. This provision applies only to qatl khata, accidental killing. The Quran adds, ذَلِكَ تَخْفِيفٌ مِّن رَبِّكُمْ وَرَحْمَةٌ. This is a concession and mercy from your Lord. Even though accidental killing is still a crime, because it was not deliberate, justice requires that the punishment be lighter, with provisions of compensation and mercy. Heirs are not permitted to accept blood money in cases of intentional murder. Beloved brothers, this concession of diyat applies only in accidental killing. Remember this well. In the case of intentional murder, qatl amd, the heirs of the slain are not permitted to make their own decision and accept blood money or diyat. Absolutely not. Such a case is state versus the accused. It is a crime against society, against the state itself. According to the Quran, in intentional murder, there is no allowance for blood money or diyat. The punishment is death for death. It is another matter if certain circumstances arise in which the punishment may be reduced, but that lies within the discretion of the court. The heirs of the victim have no right to pardon the murderer in exchange for money. Allowing such a practice opens the door to immense corruption. We see daily how murders occur and then are settled through financial transactions between the murderer and the victim's heirs. This flawed law has extended permission to treat every kind of murder as negotiable, enabling heirs to strike deals with killers for blood money. The Quran does not permit this in cases of intentional killing. Intentional murder and its punishment in the Quran. Beloved brothers, in rural life, these realities are often more visible than in cities. For example, disputes over inheritance sometimes lead to deliberate killings. After the death of a person, his property passes to a single heir, and within days, conspiracies are hatched to eliminate him. Once murdered, the same heir who benefits from the inheritance is the one who negotiates with the killer. Remember this clearly. There are two distinct matters. In the case of intentional murder, qatl amd, the punishment is death. This is what the Quran calls qatl bil haqq, taking a life according to the demands of law and justice. The murderer is not merely the enemy of the victim's family, he is a criminal against society itself. As for diyat, blood money, the Quran permits it only in cases of accidental killing.
when it says, فَمَنْ عُفِيَ لَهُ مِنْ أَخِيهِ شَيْءٌ, 2178, the word shay'un indicates that there is some material compensation which can be partially remitted. This does not mean that the crime of intentional murder can be forgiven by the heirs. It refers only to the financial compensation in accidental killing, where the heirs may, if they wish, waive part of the amount. This divine system, the Islamic society, becomes the support of the heirs of the slain. The Quran says, فَاتِّبَاءٌ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَأَدَاءٌ إِلَيْهِ بِإِحْسَانٍ ذَلِكَ تَخْفِيفٌ مِّن رَبِّكُمْ وَرَحْمَةٌ فَمَنْ اعْتَدَى بَعْدَ ذَلِكَ فَلَهُ عَذَابٌ أَلِيمٌ. It means that the criminal must abide by what has been decided and must fulfill it with goodness. In prescribing the punishment for accidental killing, your Lord has placed a concession and mercy so that your capacities may continue to develop properly. But if anyone transgresses after the matter has been settled, he shall face a severe punishment. In intentional murder, the heirs of the slain have no permission. It is a crime against society. The murderer is society's criminal, and society itself enforces the punishment because qisas has been made obligatory upon it. The very next verse declares, وَلَكُمْ فِي الْقِصَاصِ حَيَاةٌ يَا أُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ, 279. Indeed, in retribution there is life for you, O people of understanding. When in cases of intentional or accidental killing, the criminal is punished for his crime, then for those who remain alive, there is life. One person's death, when punished justly, grants life to the whole community. That is why it is said, وَلَكُمْ فِي الْقِصَاصِ حَيَاةٌ يَا أُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ, 279. If you reflect with reason and wisdom beyond superficial emotions, you will realize that in the law of qisas lies the secret of your collective life. It is so that you may uphold the laws thereafter. Thus, in qisas there is life. Today's lesson has brought us up to verse 179. Beloved brothers, in the next verse the subject will be the protection of wealth, which we shall take up in the coming lesson. رَبَّنَا تَقَبَّلْ مِنَّا إِنَّكَ أَنْتَ السَّمِيعُ الْعَلِيمُ.